Welcome to Let's Blame the Planets, a monthly astrology podcast where we use what's happening in the sky as a starting point for conversation, reflection and storytelling. This isn't about predictions or having all the answers. It's about exploring astrology as it shows up in real life and helping you understand astrology for what it really is. My name is Sandra and I'm a natal astrologer, and together with my co-host Fery our horary astrologer, we'll dive deep each month into a topic that feels relevant for the world, or sometimes just for us. We both have a strong Sagittarius streak, so expect curiosity, big questions, and the occasional philosophical detour. Okay, great. Okay. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get started. And finally, we're going to do this podcast.
I know. I'm excited. We've already talked a lot about this, and I feel like we could have recorded our preparation sessions, but we've got a lot of notes. And we want to cover a lot, but we're going to start with the question, what is astrology to us? What is astrology to you, Fery? Tell me.
Astrology actually, I think is an interesting thing when I started to learn astrology, right? So when I started, I feel like when I was young, I really like kind of like talking to the stars. I think that's where I start to interested in astrology. And I feel like they are a living being in a lot of sense. They have consciousness, right? And then when I really started into astrology, the deeper I go into it, I feel like it's much more a language rather than a belief system. And I feel like it's a reflection of what is within us rather than what's causing things problem. Even though we're calling this podcast called Let's Blame the Planet, I think it's like a little bit funny way to saying it, because sometimes we like to blame. But for me, I feel like the reflection is actually you learning to the nature cycle, because I think astrology is kind of like describing the cycle of nature and the star, the movement. They're all like living beings and affecting us because we're all connected in so many different ways. So for me, astrology is a language describing and what is moving within us, basically. I think that's what coming through to me. And the more I understand it, the more I feel that's how astrology works. And you don't need to believe in it. And it's just describing what is within you, reflecting us individually or collectively. How about you? How do you start this journey? And
I couldn't have explained it better myself, actually. I really agree with that. I think I was always really into astrology as a child. I knew my sun sign, and for me it was always the moon. I was always really fascinated by the moon, and my chart is ruled by the moon. And but now, I've been studying astrology for years now, and I agree with you. I think what astrology's given me is a language to explain my journey here and our journey here. And it's not so much I really move away from prediction, even though obviously you can see what's coming up. It's like a weather forecast. You're kind of it's, and we're going to talk about, I say I move away from prediction, and we're going to do this today, looking at 2026, but it's more of a, you can see what's coming up in some ways, but you don't know exactly how that's going to land. And again, that kind of, it's a language to understand the cycles we're in, And I think in my personal practice, I practice natal astrology, giving people that bigger picture view of just reflecting what they're going through, and that seems really simple, but it can be so, it can be so validating in some respects, just to have a language to explain what's going on. So I really agree with that. The cycles. I still believe in free will. I don't think planets allow. Planets don't make us do things, and I think this is something I want to be really careful with, especially as we look at this 2026 forecast. We're calling this podcast "Let's Blame the Planets," but that's actually what we're trying not to do, because the planets are just showing us what's already happening. They're not causing things. And I remember I talked to a friend of mine who's a quantum physicist, and he's like, Sandy, are you serious? Do you really think that Mercury is affecting the rubbish truck outside, And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't think, obviously the moon affects us physically, but that's not what astrology is about. The moon is a reflection in other ways in terms of language of what's going on in our emotional level, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's what it gives us a mirror to look into. And I think that's really important to look at, to put a big proviso on this 2026 forecast that we're doing, that, you know, when I have people come to me, they want to hear good news. They want to be like, when is it going to be over? Like, I'm in it, you know? And I think we do have free will, even with this forecast. Like, there's good times in 2026, and there's also a lot of full-on energy, you know? And it is about free will. What can we do with this energy that's productive, that actually and I think, you know, before jumping in too much into the 2026 energy, what can we do with this energy that is going to push us forward on the route that we want, and maybe counter the other stuff that's happening, because it is it's a very fighting energy this year. So
and also like commenting on your free will thing, I really want to add on as well. So like, for example, I'm practicing horary astrology. So horary astrology is basically like if you have a specific question, and the astrology as a channel, when she or him understood what is your question asking about, and the chart reflecting on what the situation you are involved in, right? But that's also honoring your free will. So like, for example, I'm giving you all this information. How do you deal with about it, right? So it's not about prediction. It's about, okay, this describing what's the energy going on here with this information of how the energy moves, and then you will deciding like what is your decision. So nothing will help you or like kind of like do it for you. You have to make your own decision based on the information you know. And the astrology is providing that information about how it's kind of like describing a current, right? So for example, when tides is out, and that's when you pushing things outward. When tides is in, and that's when you're pushing things inwards, right? So it's basically you learn the language of the cosmos, right? And then when you understand more and you can utilizing it as a better advantage of your own life to enhance your human life instead of like disassociate with it, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's really, really honoring the free will, and also the prediction. Like I also feel like astrology is like a compass, right? So it's like your soul map. And when you're looking at your soul's journey, and like when you look at bigger picture, when in the esoteric astrology, so it's not just your personality, this life cycle is also incarnation as well. So when you're looking at this, so of course, no one know your script, right? There's no certain way. You have so many, when we're talking about shamanic practice, like timelines as well. So it really depends on your own free will at this moment, determine which path you're going to go. But this shows you your highest potential. If you, for example, when we do natal chart, you can see the highest potential, your weakness, your strength, right? So it's showing you, okay, what is my highest potential? How can I overcome this, like sort of like a challenging time, a lot of people say, right? And then you can actually utilizing that instead of like, oh, okay, it's just prediction. It's not just prediction. It's a showing you a map, but up to you, you want to take it or not. Right. So I feel like that's the free will part in astrology. And also I feel there's like so many descriptive things in the chart, and to help us actually basically as a soul to grow and evolve as well. It's not just, okay, just the planet, that's my personality. It's more than that, you know? So I think that's something I want to add on as well, the free will. And also it's not prediction. It's basically a map. Right. And then it's kind of like give you a GPS, but you can choose, I'm not following it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or like, so, you know, it's going to rain tomorrow, but you can choose whether you take an umbrella or you might feel like dancing in the rain, you know? No, I really agree with that. The other thing I just want to add quickly as well is from what you were saying, you know, you can't outrun, at the same time, you can't outrun, like, for example, what's happening. And I think this is really another thing that I find when I do individual readings, and I guess this brings me to the next point about this reading. Yes, we're talking about the collective energy of 2026, which we'll all feel on some level, but obviously individually we'll all be going on our own journeys. So, you know, we'll be talking about things in this episode that isn't going to land the same for everyone individually in your life, but as a collective, we will all feel this in the world. And on some level, we are part of the collective, you know? So we all are on the same journey and individual journeys as well. And I think just like individually we have free will on some level. I think as a collective, we on some level have some free will too. And I think this is really pertinent in the 2026 astrology, because it's like we can't hang back anymore. You know, we can't just, and we'll talk about that. The other thing is you can't hide in a cave and wait for the astrology to be over. You know, like when I have people come in and say, oh, you know, and I'm like, wow, you've got a tough time coming up. And they're just like, well, how can I make it easier? And I'm like, no matter what you do, it's going to be hard, you know? So it's kind of like, well, but what do you want to be doing when it's hard? Like, what do you want to work hard at?
What's your response?
Like if there's a Saturn transit, what do you want to work hard at? You know, like that's your choice. You're going to work hard no matter what, but what is it that you want to work hard at? So, a little intro there on our thoughts on astrology anyway. But how about we go into the astrology of 2026, which is what this episode is about?
Yeah, let's go into the 2026. I'm excited about that. Actually. Yeah. Exciting. And also, I know something coming up for me already.
Yeah, right. Okay. So my question is like, when you saw the astrology, when we were prepping for this episode, how did you feel about the astrology for 2026?
It's I feel like of course, like I'm not following the calendar new year for sure. And I feel like we are not just in 2026 just yet in a lot
way. Well, because you're just give some background to that, just so you know our viewers know. Do you want to give some background to that, just so our viewers know what you mean? You're not following the calendar.
So it's kind of like so in astrology. I don't know who invented the calendar, the official calendar. For example, in China, in Chinese New Year, like Chinese New Year is actually New Year. So we also have the fire horse. So each year, the Chinese zodiac sign, like so basically have like archetype energy to describe the whole year. So you don't need to get into, for example, like the Western astrology, like you dive deep into all the transit and that kind of stuff. That's detailed, like transit in each month and how you unfolding stuff like that, right? But in Chinese zodiac, it's basically talking about the archetype of each year. So we have elements, you have the animal archetype as well. So the fire horse is 2026, but it actually starting on February 17th. And that's also interesting as well, because it's happening exactly on an eclipse as well. So it will be really intense, but that's when the year actually really starts, right? So that's why, for example, if you're still feeling okay, you are in January, you are not needing to do the resolution just yet, because you're still in a phase of like, releasing and clearing and even organizing like the old stuff, right? Or like, what are you going to taking it with you in the next year? What are you going to leave behind, right? So I feel like that's the window for us still preparing for the fire horse, right? And what fire horse means. Fire, you can imagine, fire is like really passionate and also can bring conflict, can bring like really anger and as well. So like every element, every single astrology, even like planet, like the movement can have like negative manifestation and positive manifestation. This really depends on how we as individual or collectively to moving forward with this energy. So fire can be really fast momentum, go, 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 right? And also can be really battle, like war or even, you know, so that's to extreme end. So this really depends on how you utilizing this fire for the good, right? And horse as well, in another sense, is like momentum, like fast moving, right? And also I feel like this energy is like before the fire horse, really when we're talking about that later, the planet movement, when this energy really starting to like kind of like starting running, and you don't have time to think. You have to just like making decision with the moment. You have to build in the momentum. There's no, if you cannot catch the speed or like having the preparation with this two window, and then you are either out of breath or just burn out. And but if you're really kind of like really in line with what you were passionate about, what you really, and also I feel like it's a really bold energy as well. It's like being seen and speaking up, and then just really standing up for things you love. You know what I mean? So this like really strong fiery energy. When you're looking at the fire horse archetype, I feel like it's also the Sagittarius as well, if you want to associate with, and just like go adventure, like taking the risk and taking the lead. And also, even when I channel the invocation for 2026, there's like a big mantra for 2026 was that take the lead and assert your ground and let them. So always people were judging you, right? So just this is like something you have to embrace the confidence, embrace the like being seen, being bold, and being who you are, and express. It's like really kind of like expressive sort of like energy, and I also feel like this is something encouraged because like we are so suppressed our like expression in so many different ways.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's a really interesting reflection. The fire horse actually, you know, really mirrors the Western astrology as well, you know, with the air and the fire, all that's happening. So we've got every planet this year moving into a different sign, or Pluto's already moved into a different sign, and they're all going to be in air and fire. So again, that forward momentum, you know, it's about, yeah, like you said, with the fire horse, like forward momentum, there's going to be quick, fast, no holding back. And there is this little pause at the start of the year, I think, as well. Astrologically, I mean, the astrological new year is in like end of March when the sun ingresses into Aries, right? And I always feel that actually every year. January never feels like a new beginning to me. It feels like we're still kind of like, I think every new beginning has an ending too that we're still getting rid of. So I do feel the new beginning energy. And I think that's what 2025 was as well. You know, it's like we got a taste for 2026 and 2025 because we had all the planets like Neptune, Saturn, Pluto. They all went into the new signs and then retrograded back. So we got that taste, you know? So 2025 was this like, oh, this is what's coming, but this is what we have to like let go of. And this is what we have to wrap up. And I feel like these next couple of months is the same. Like you said, you know, really preparing for this forward momentum. Because once what's the date for you? I think February, March, like once those hit, it's just going to be like full go. And like when I looked at that astrology for 2026, for me personally, I'm really excited. I have a lot of fire and air in my chart, but I'm also like, oh, like I'm pace myself in some ways because, like you said, you can burn out. There's so much, you know, if you think about air fuels fire, right? So, and it is challenge. It's a challenging year. Like there was part of me that was really excited. You know, Uranus moving into Gemini is it's exciting, but it's also like, whoa. And there's also a part of me that has a lot of trepidation. I mean, we've already seen some awful events happened in the year last year worldwide. So much more war. I mean, literally yesterday at the full moon, we had
the sun conjunct Mars.
Sun conjunct Mars. We had America invading Venezuela. Obviously, we've had, you know, over the new year, we've had all these fires, you know, claiming lives, awful. And there is this like, it's not all or not, like it's not all positive, definitely not. And I agree to you at a certain extent that we can use the energy for positive, but I also think we can't ignore that negative stuff will happen. And that is part of our experience here, you know, like, and it is about, so yes, part of me was excited for 2026 and part of me is like, there's a lot of trepidation because I think we are going to have to stand up. We are going to have to fight because it is a fight. It is a fighting energy. We're going to see fires moving, you know, literal fires and war fires and just general fires just like lighting up everywhere. And I mean, there's no kind of fixed energy. Well, apart from, there's no kind of grounding energy anymore, you know? So it'll be fast. It probably won't stay around. So I would say I'm excited and also like, we're going to have to put our big girl panties on, you know?
And also like another thing I want to add on, like about the fire energy as well, like about the avatar, when you're talking about fighting, right? Like when you're looking at so sometimes like what I see, like all the movies and art, and that's all a channel, the collective consciousness in a lot of way through individual, right? So when the movie coming out, like especially the third Avatar, I feel like there's one scene, if you haven't seen it, I'm just gonna just put it out there, really get me emotional, and I really feel the fighting energy was I think the second son, like he convinced the Takun with the kind of like the whale in the movie to fight, because they knew in an ancient way, for example, peace cannot, like for example, if you are peaceful and you're just using your ancient way and just always welcoming, and then you cannot against the gun, and you have to fight. And it's kind of like the energy, you must fight, you must stand up, and to kind of like stand up for injustice, to stand up for like something is not. And also I agree with what are you saying about it's not all about the positive. We cannot ignore the negative as well, because the negative side of things causing a lot of trauma, the generational trauma. And that's why the collective consciousness kind of like now needing healing. That's why when this year we're having the Chiron in Taurus, I feel that's a taste of really healing the Mother Earth, right? Because as a human going through history, like we kind of seems like we didn't remember the history. Like we have war before and we make peace with it, and now we're starting to do it again. Like we never learn from the mistake. So now it's kind of like I also feel like explosion energy with this as well. Like Mother Earth will have like more rage and just really expressing itself. Yes, life will maybe kind of like, I don't know, like tragedy will happen through fire, through explosion, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes when you're really, really looking at it in a collective way, it's actually for the good. Because when we're not acknowledging people's trauma, like the generational trauma, not acknowledging like what has been taken from us, and where's this disassociation, disconnect coming from, and then there's no healing, right? There's no peace. So that's what I'm saying. Like you cannot just always good vibe only, like always looking for the positive. You also need to say, hey, there's something negative happening here. It's not all negative. There's some dark stuff going on we ignored and we suppressed. And that's when you're actually looking at the daemon itself, and it's not daemon anymore. And it will soft, it will heal. But if we not looking at it, and the healing, it will never happen. So I feel like this is another energy we might touch on as well, the Chiron in Taurus. But that's just one thing.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, should we look at the planets then? We're going to start with the outer planets and see what they're up to.
Let's start,
So I think the big one, for like the overarching one, obviously, is Pluto in Aquarius, which is already, it already entered Aquarius, fully entered Aquarius last year. It was already kind of dipping back and forth from 2023. So we're really in that energy now. But the reason we're still talking about it in 2026 because Pluto is the slowest moving planet. So it's going to be in Aquarius for 18 and a half years. So this is kind of like the biggest cycle, right? So when we talk about astrology, we have the outer planets, the larger cycles, and then kind of moving into the inner planets, showing us the events that are happening within the bigger cycle. And I think Pluto in Aquarius is the biggest cycle right now. So we'll talk about that. I think we can talk about it's already in Aquarius. Obviously, things that come up from Pluto and Aquarius is power to the people, protest, humanitarianism. But we can also look at the extremes of, I think Pluto and Aquarius is very extreme. Like Pluto is an extreme planet. And I think those protests and that humanitarianism that's been coming up over the since 2023, but really last year when it was in Aquarius even more, like people were starting to stand up, to rise up. It's a reaction to, I think, the darker side of Pluto and Aquarius, which is, can be fascism, and it can be nuclear power, it can be ultimate power. Obviously, there's also AI, which I think Uranus and Gemini is going to bring in even more. But, kind of these extreme forms of power that are in some ways centered on one authority figure, or one, whether it's AI or a person, but that actually affect all of us. So that's like that Aquarian energy. It's the collective energy, but Pluto holds the power, and it's kind of this. It's the bigger picture. The tech bros, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Trump, he's very Aquarian, the technological advancements. And I do think for me, like Pluto and Aquarius is very nuclear as well. So there is this two extremes, I think, of Pluto and Aquarius that mirror each other and that rise each other up. People are fighting against the power that is being used.
Yeah, and also another thing I want to add on, because I feel like if you how you feel about Pluto in Capricorn, because for me, like not personally, for like collective that can see is like a I feel the from the Capricorn to the Aquarius is like a shift from the power in the authority in the institution in the hierarchy now slowly really shifting to the people, right? And
Slowly,
also yeah, and
slowly.
also yeah, and I feel like Pluto is also like a how can I say like a I will associate Pluto with underworld, like in the
Mm,
shamanic
yeah,
practice, the underworld, right?
totally.
So the darker psyche. So now, because
100%.
when we people seeing the darkness of the
Mm,
hierarchy of like how the
mm,
system was functioning,
mm,
and then the darker psyche of the humanity will rise, kind of like because for me, Pluto is like this stirring in the underworld, like really brings something darkness in the underworld in our human psyche to the surface. So we, yes, it sounds like a because for me, like Pluto also is like destroyer, right? Destroy things. And then in order for you to rebuild and things can really be clean, detoxing. For me, like Pluto is a planet really detoxing all the shit we had within ourselves, within collectively in the humanity as well,
mm.
right? So I think that's kind of like okay, really stirring a lot suppressed like unprocessed trauma and healing, all that kind of like in our collective consciousness and bring it to the surface, and then you can change, you can detox, and you can really bring the power, shifting the power back to Aquarius. But
Yeah,
of course that's really depends on each individual, how awakened we are and what we do and each decision we're making. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like when you're talking about nuclear, yes, it's definitely also because the power struggle is there. It can be
yeah,
like negative manifestation as well. So that's why I'm saying like I think that's probably the reason why one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast. We really want to bring more awareness to what it is there, and then the more people having that understanding, have that consciousness, and then we can actually moving the humanity in a direction where like it's actually for the good, not going
mm,
into the negative manifestation, isn't it? So I think that's like
yeah,
really good to know, but not saying, hey, get yourself into a fearful mode, saying, oh, I need to be fearful about this. No, you just need to, hey, your each individual decision matters for the whole, you know?
yeah. And I think Pluto, Pluto is about power and what
Yeah.
Pluto can do to us individually. I mean, you've got a Pluto transit coming up, so we can talk about that really briefly in a minute. So, this
Yeah.
is again, this is the collective level we're talking about. But when you have a Pluto transit individually, I think um, it does, and I've just come out of a Pluto transit.
Yeah.
It feels like the power is taken away from you to start with,
Yeah.
and then you realize, well, no, I actually do have power,
Yeah.
and that's the gift of Pluto. It takes it away for you to fight to get it back.
Yeah.
And at the end of that transit, individually it can take 2, 3, sometimes even 5 years. By the
Yeah.
end of it, you look back and you're like, well, if when you've worked with the energy, I am more powerful than I ever was before
Yeah.
because everything was taken away from me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what we experience individually when we go through a Pluto transits, and I think that's what we're
Yeah.
going to experience as a collective. Power
Yeah.
being taken away from us. I mean, we're
Yeah.
really lucky so far here in New Zealand, but I can
Yeah.
see it on a world stage. Power is being taken away from people.
Yeah.
A lot of power, and people are like, no, this is not okay.
Yeah.
So again, it's like the negative stuff is actually not negative because it forces us to really
Yeah.
look at what we believe in, what we want to fight for. So, do you
Yeah.
want to briefly talk about your Pluto
Yeah.
experience
That's
going
gonna
up?
be interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my personal chart, I have so Pluto is gonna go into I think 3 degrees in Aquarius. I have Saturn,
Mm,
natal Saturn in that degree. And also I have like Venus in my fifth house in 3 degrees will square my natal Saturn. So that's like a thing. So when Pluto transiting over top of my natal Saturn, so I will going through Pluto Saturn transit, right? So if you know a little bit about
and
astrology,
Venus.
you will
And
know this
Venus.
like too big bad boy in a lot of
Mm,
sense. Yeah, so actually like for me like it's not fearful because I do know like last year like when last year Pluto also back forth in that degree as well. So I checked the date and it was when I was starting to do my shamanic training. I
mm,
did a lot of like ancestral healing in the training itself. So and it took me like 6 months to really integrating. Like it's basically you feel like okay, there's so much generational conditioning and what they believe, and then I carried within me, And I can even feel in the session, like when I'm receiving healing, I feel like I can see like how the power being taken away from my ancestors. And also, I think that's for me, just individually, this transit, Pluto means like a little bit generational sort of like also because Pluto is outer planet. For me, outer planet it is a generational planet, right?
It is,
So there's
yeah.
like a lot thing deeper than just your individual life, not personal life, right? So I feel
And
like
it's in
in
your
that
eighth house.
time,
So again, that brings, I think, a more of a generational feel to it as well, because the eighth house is a
yes,
lot deeper.
yeah, the eighth house as well.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, well, my Saturn was in eighth house,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I was bringing that things coming up, and then now it's kind of like it's coming up in January, and so it's gonna finally not going back to Capricorn, it just straight away touch my Saturn and square my Venus. There's a lot of like we were talking about yesterday. I was like the Venus in Scorpio, right? Like and Saturn on top of that, like squaring it. And so in general, I do feel there's lot of suppression about me, like in love or in relationship. Like I will just be like the sexual like really pressure and that kind of thing. But Saturn is kind of like delay, and I want you having some commitment. Want you really kind of like be more serious, more solid in a lot of ways. So you feel when I was young, of course, I feel like there's a lot of restriction, there's a lot of conditioning in my culture as well, right? But in this, I don't know, like I feel like this kind of like the coming up. I'm not sure. This feels like a lot of like I feel like before, yeah, the taste I had like in the last year March, I feel like was more generational ancestral healing. I'm still feeling that's like a part of the theme, but like I said, I cannot predict. It's just like you can see, just wait and see. But definitely, it's like a really kind of like for me, it's like detoxing. Like for me, detox. What is the Saturn square like Venus in me? I haven't really deal with it, and now Pluto is showing me taking away things not no longer serving me in order to for me to actually okay. If I really, for example, looking for a relationship or and how can I be solid in that sense, Saturn sense, also allowing that Venus not being suppressed and in her full goddess energy to coming out. Because
Yeah.
Pluto is also a phoenix rising energy, but depends on how you working with it. You can work it because Pluto always carried like a darker side of things. You might feel like a obsession, like like the jealousy or like all the power struggles, right? But once you really actually committed to working with it, it can be a phoenix rising energy because
Yeah.
Pluto go really dark into your deep psyche. The Scorpio go really dark emotional depth, and then they see through things. They see through bullshit, right? And then when you actually coming out of it, you rise, right? So for me, I feel like it's a really it might be challenging, it might be really intense because Pluto bring intensity as well. So I'm
Yeah.
aware of that. So yeah, and also I booked a ticket right on the Pluto. I think it's Pluto come to my Pluto conjunct my natal Saturn exact date. I should check the date, but I didn't. And as astrology, I should do that. But sometimes, like, I have really strong Sagittarius. Oh, let's just do it, like, and that's just kind of like, and then apparently my subconscious probably know the date. And that's where I really need to do the big, because I haven't been home for 7 years. And
You've
so
booked the
that's
ticket
where
to
another big,
China.
sorry?
You've booked the ticket to China on that day.
Yes, on that
Yeah.
day. And then so that's kind of like where, like the whole, and I'm gonna be in there for like a whole month. So I will keep you updated and how is actually happening because no one knows. We're gonna predict what's going to
Yeah.
happen. But it's definitely
It'll be
a lot healing,
transformational. It'll be
detoxing.
deep. Yeah, it'll be transformational. It'll be deep, and it will potentially be painful because Pluto can be painful. But it'll be like you say, it's going to be purifying and knowing you because you don't mind going deep. You will come
Yeah.
out stronger. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing
Yeah,
that.
great. Yeah, so I think that's just me. And shall we talking about another oh, there's two things we're talking about. Pluto Mars conjunction. How do you feel about
Yeah,
that?
so we did talk about that. I mean, the Pluto transit date, what do we got here? We've got, yeah, that's not, yeah, we've got a Pluto Mars conjunction, is that 28th of January. So that again, I think one of the reasons we talk about Pluto at the start of this episode, is, that is quite a strong signature, Pluto Mars, both very much about power, fighting. Mars is the warrior, you know, Pluto is about power. So again, the start of the year really starts off quite intense with that. So that is on the 28th of January. Yeah, I think, you know, anyone with fixed signs in the first few degrees of fixed signs individually, that's going to be a really transformational year for them. You know, like you've got Venus at 3 degrees. Scorpio, anyone with Leo placements, Aquarius placements, Scorpio, and what am I forgetting? Taurus. Those first few degrees, you know, it's going to be a big year for people with personal planets or angles at those degrees. So I think the year really does start off with the power play signature, which we've already seen. I mean, like the US has just bombed Venezuela. So, you know, there is going to be power plays. And I think this carries on throughout the year. Like leaders are going to be really in the spotlight with Leo going into Jupiter going into Leo. But I think moving on to the next kind of big transit of the year, which is actually the transit of the year that is the biggest one, I would say. Pluto and Aquarius has already been in the background, but the next one is Neptune Saturn conjunction. You know, both Neptune and Saturn are going to be entering Aries for good this year. So again, they've been going back and forward already. What have I got here? So Neptune will be in Aries for 14 years, and it's going to enter into Aries in March. And it's going to be there till 2039, which is a long time. And Saturn will be there for 2.5 years, so less long. You know, in astrology, that's a blink of an eye, but Saturn always leaves his mark as well. From May 2025 till April 2028. But the big transit of the year is that conjunction in February. The exact date.
I think it's Feb 15th. No.
15, is it? Yeah, it is.
22nd. 22nd.
Exact conjunction. 2022. February.
That's when I'm coming back.
Yeah, it's when you're coming back. It's going to be such an interesting trip. We're going to have to do a whole podcast on it, I think.
I actually didn't choose the date. I was like, okay, I didn't check the date before I booked tickets.
I mean, you talk about free will, but do we? Like sometimes I'm like, do we? I think the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 22nd, that is the biggest transit of the year. You know, it's definitely happening in February, but it's ongoing because they're kind of doing this little dance the whole year.
Because they're close,
especially for the first 4 or 5 months. You know, I think this is definitely about an erosion of structure, because Saturn is about structure, structure and limitations, and you know, commitment and what we know, like it's familiar, it's time, like Saturn builds over time, so it's something that we're really familiar with because it's been there forever. But Neptune, you know, erodes things, it dissolves things, I should say. It dissolves things. Neptune brings like I mean, Neptune is associated with grief as well, I would say, and loss, you know. So there is this erosion of structure, but it's also bringing, you know, really looking at what's working, bringing your dreams into reality, you know, like what is working, what isn't working. I think that's on an individual level, you know, like, again, we've been in Pisces with Saturn and Neptune, which has been all very, also, I think, bringing dreams into reality on some level, but a little bit more higher level. And now it's like, right, we're moving forward. How are we going to do this? You know? And on a collective level, this is where, you know, the warfare, I think, is going to come in. Very much so. There's an idealization, I think, of war with Neptune and Aries. You know, Neptune idealizes. It's Neptune.
The spiritual warfare.
Spiritual warfare as well. Yeah, definitely. But also, like on the ground warfare, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how and romanticizing that in some way as well. You know. Yeah, that's kind of what I
Yeah.
think there. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts about this Neptune
Yeah, I
Saturn?
totally agree. But also, when you're talking about the Neptune dissolving, like the structures, right? So I think I really like that angle because I always totally
Mm,
see different things as well. But I do agree with that. I feel like it's two different manifestation as well. So for me, Neptune is also the higher spiritual planet, right? So before when we Neptune in Pisces, which we're having a lot spiritual download. We have like a spiritual, for example, the health and wellness industry and like spirituality become more popular, and like
mm,
people starting to believe like spiritual things more, you know. So that's kind of like all the things coming to a collective consciousness. But now it's like when Saturn is there, because Saturn asking for boundaries, asking
mm,
for structures, right? So it's basically, I feel like sometimes it's kind of like pulling people to who are really in that spiritual realm into the reality. So it's
mm,
actually asking for boundaries. It's asking for
mm.
like, okay, how you ground your reality in this humanity instead of like always in that spiritual realm. Like it's kind of like talking about spiritual bypassing a lot of way,
Yeah,
using spirituality as a escapism, right? So I can
mm,
see now people are more vocalization about, okay, how we're actually doing healing. It's not always about doing the spiritual highs, actually bring people in the humanness and grounding your spirituality in humanity. So that's when I see the Saturn in Neptune is like what's actually really work. Even for my personal experiences, I will see like how I evolve, like my spiritual practice over the time changes. And my
mm.
beliefs around spirituality changes as well because it's like what actually working for me, what actually really true, how actually this can bring this humanness forward movement rather than just in that spiritual sort of like meditation, like yoga, all that kind
Yeah,
of like, you know, good stuff, but how you actually grounding this in this humanity and how you
yeah,
really actually setting the boundaries. Because also I feel like Saturn is teaching the Neptune to setting the boundaries, to be grounded as
yeah,
well. Right. So there's another angle to looking at it. And so that's why I feel like and also like you said, I really agree with actualizing the dream as well, because the Neptune can bring us a lot of inspirations and download and all that kind of stuff. But Saturn's like, okay, you have so many ideas, and which one is actually can actually pushing you moving forward, and which one
yeah,
is doable. So it's not just
yeah,
say, hey, I have so many ideas, I have so many things, but you only have this body and this energy, and how you actually utilizing what you've got
yeah,
to actually like make it happen, basically, right? Make
yeah.
it work.
Yeah, it's
So I
being
think that's
discerning, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So I
being
think that's the
discerning.
energy of for
Yeah.
my understanding of Saturn and Neptune conjunction. Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with that as well. I think some of that has already been in the Pisces, with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. I think Saturn in Pisces has kind of brought that, the bypassing of spirituality and some prominent figures that have
Yeah.
been kind of called out on
Yeah.
about, how
Mm,
they've been uh, preaching to the masses. Um,
yeah.
so I think that's already, but even more so now with Saturn and Neptune and Aries, yeah, it's kind of like, well, how, yeah, I agree. That's, yeah,
Yeah. And also I feel like also bring some sort of like responsibility, like commitment
responsibility.
to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
for the spirituality as well. Because a lot of
yeah,
people, hey, I do this, and like I starting to do, like for example, you did a course and then you're starting to teach, and it actually doesn't have the responsibility of what you actually dealing with. You're dealing with people's trauma, you're dealing with people's, like for example, a lot of like maybe not it's your position to kind of like teach, because everybody have their individual journey, the spiritual journey, the healing journey is their own, right? So all we can do is actually show up as an example rather than, hey, this is the way, this you should do the same way. You need to allow people to do the same, but you taking responsibility of what is your role you're playing, right? So even for example, we're both doing teaching and coaching and stuff, like we do have like a big responsibility of how we show up and how we
yeah,
actually taking people's, like, you know, like the trust as a like a responsibility. It's not just like, hey, I learned this so I can teach you. No, it's there's
yeah.
like a bigger responsibility in that, you know?
Yeah, sorry, I'm smiling because I know you've got so many
Yeah.
Capricorn planets, and you speak about Saturn so well.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, I'm not a massive Saturn fan because I don't have a lot of Saturn or
Yeah, I like Saturn,
Capricorn, but I
like
like it. I like it. I need it. But I do agree, actually, really agree with the responsibility part, and I take that very seriously. I also like one thing that I've actually was just thinking about this morning, and we're digressing a little bit, so this is the last little bit before we move on. But this morning about, I was hearing a lot in the last few years about this 5D reality and all this, and I don't know whether it's because I've completely zoned out from that talk, but there seems to be less of that, which I don't think is a bad thing. Because again, this 5D reality of I thought was such a spiritual bypass. I'm like, but we're here, we're in the world, like we need to make the spirituality mean something to everyday reality, and like I'm also really personally anti the whole like awakened people, because I'm like, everyone is here on their journey doing their thing, and we're all awakened in some way. Like I just so I've maybe it's because I've tuned out from it that I haven't heard as much, but I do feel like there's been a lot more, again, responsibility around how that's been portrayed, and actually and this is something that I think the Neptune and Saturn and Aries is going to force us to do, is that we can't spiritually bypass anymore. We do have to stand up for what's right in today's world, because we can't ignore it. Like we can't ignore people invading other people. Like it's just not okay. And like going, but on the 5D, we're all like happy and
the love and light, love and light.
We're all one. Yes, we're all one. So if I can stand up for one another, So
because,
I think that's kind of the fire, is like, come on.
Yeah, like, the Aries, like that's fire, because like Aries, Pisces like have it. Yeah, Pisces have that energy of like the sacrifice. Like I just give, and it can be unconditional love. But like bring back to the avatar as well. It's like you must fight, because this is not right. When you're fighting for the gun, you cannot just say, "Hey, let's love and light, let's meditate," right? This is not.
I mean, just go watch Avatar 3, guys, and you'll get it. I haven't seen it.
You'll get it. What I'm talking about.
My one homework for this podcast, and I didn't do it. I didn't go and see Avatar. I did watch Avatar 1 and 2, but apparently Avatar 3 is like So
the fire energy. So I think that's definitely. The thing I was, and also I feel like now it's kind of like now, and also another thing I want to talking about is like before the spirituality, maybe for example, is like romanticizing, like you're talking about, like people like kind of like, okay, like you said, 5D and multi-dimensional and all that kind of stuff. It's beautiful. Even for in my shamanic training, we do explore all of that as well, like your multi-dimensional like being, or like but and then like we are not just going there. You actually bring, even for example, when you do past life regression, all that kind of stuff, you only dealing with it when that past life affecting this life right now. And otherwise, you're not just gonna be nosy about, okay, what I'm gonna be my past life was, It just really, you have to bring that spirituality to help you with this life. And also, like I said, now it's more individualized spirituality. What is your truth? Because Aries is I am, right? So like, what is true for me? How I assert my truth, instead of like listening to everybody's own like knowledge, or you have to really setting the ground, saying, hey, what is truth for me, instead of like, okay, I just like no boundaries, I just listening to everybody else, like in the deep ocean, like Pisces, right? So now it's like, really, what is true for me based on my own experiences, and there's no need to listening to someone else, and because they're experiencing this, right? Because their experiences is unique for them, and that's their truth. And then you have to really asserting your ground, what is your truth for you, and also the Saturn coming into the boundaries as well. It's like, hey, where's my boundaries? Where's like really having that discernment, not allowing all the bypassing thing coming through in my field. You know what I mean? So
all right, good. So again, people with strong cardinal signs at early degrees. It's all in the early degrees too, which again, I wanted to just say, like, we're all just, this is a starting out. Like we're really, we've crossed the threshold now. We've been in this threshold for like 5-6 years, since kind of 2020. And we've crossed it now. And this is all in the early degrees. Like it's all we're beginning. This is a beginning for the next 18, 14, 7, 8 years. This is a new beginning. Like we are just entering this phase. So again, cardinal signs, early cardinal signs. So Aries, Capricorn, I always go blank. Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, and
Aries.
I've said Aries.
Oh,
my
yeah.
God.
Yeah, 3: Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer. I think there are 3, right?
Yeah.
3 cardinal signs. Yeah.
No, there's 4.
Wait. Cancer.
Oh
Yeah, Cancer, Capricorn,
Aries, and Libra.
Aries,
Libra.
and Libra.
I always forget about Libra because they're so, they are cardinal, but they're so.
Yeah, Libra is so peaceful.
I know. Anyway, so okay. So the next transit we were going to talk about just briefly, because I'm aware of time, is and I am happy to see this actually in some ways, because we've talked about the fire and the earth, or fire and the air already, and there's more fire and air to come. We'll talk about that, but we have got one earth transit from an outer planet, which is Chiron. I mean, he's not there very long. So Chiron enters Taurus in June, and then he's only there till August. So it's not a long period, but I think this is where we will start to see the consequences already of our fire-air movement in the physical. So whether that's personally, I think, burnout, Taurus is the body. Chiron is obviously the wounded healer, and I'm very aware of that in my own chart. I have a lot of fire air, and I am very prone to burnout because I don't have any earth. So, I think personally, people, whenever I have clients come to me with this sort of, I'm like, look after your body this year. And so, the consequences of all this fire and earth on our bodies, and collectively, I think the consequences of this fire and air on the environment, and you briefly touched upon this, on the earth, and again, you can look at it from a more spiritual point of view, like the Mother Earth and the wounding we have been doing to her for hundreds of years since we've entered this kind of, industrial age. But also, again, it's going to affect everyday life. We're seeing the effects of climate change. We're seeing the effects of these weather events and, and real, food shortages and all that. So I think that's, it's not an easy transit, but I think it's a necessary one, because I think if we just had the fire and earth, fire and air, why do I keep saying that? Fire and air, we would just be like, burn it all down, go, go, go. Whereas I think Chiron dipping into Taurus for the first time, that's really going to ground us in some ways and show us, what we've done.
Yeah. And also another thing I want to add, just coming to me just briefly, that Chiron in Taurus, I feel like also it's the energy of because for me, Taurus is also kind of like healing about the financial security as well. I'm not sure why that coming up. It just it's kind of like energy, because I feel like we have so many certain way, for example, 9-to-5 job and all that kind of in the system, right? There will be something collectively happening, maybe really shocking, and saying, hey, this is not how you actually sustain yourself. There's maybe another way, maybe indigenous way, maybe I don't know. It just there's more I think that's why probably the off grid is starting to kind of coming up, and it's really learn the way of nature and to heal, and to more people maybe, I don't know, that's just my feeling of it, and the how you financially sustain yourself, and not just the money side of things, really the how can I say, really connecting with the nature, and how you grow the food, and that kind of agriculture stuff even, what I mean?
I think that's really true. Again, I was talking to a client yesterday, and because I do quite, I do nervous system support stuff, and I do yoga and all that sort of stuff, but I'm seeing more and more, how can we tell people to look after their bodies and nervous system when our society is just so not geared for our biological cycles, 9 to 5 is so, especially for women, but men as well. We're not supposed to function biologically with the systems we've set up. And so, it's all well and great saying to people, well, breathe more or do some yoga, but actually the whole system's fucked. So
Yes. Yeah.
I think, and that, again, I think you're right. Like the Chiron and Taurus is going to really show us that in terms of, well, how can we make that sustainable, working within the system that we're in. And financial is huge, right? Because we're literally, the system is, capitalism is about money.
Yeah.
Capitalism is the problem. We're late stage capitalism, you know, like this is the erosion of that, and it's no longer working physically.
Yeah, but I feel like it's good in I think I can quite happy with Pluto in Aquarius. It's basically helping us really slowly like destroy or like taking things what no longer works, because I can see a lot of people are starting to awakening in this reality saying, hey, this is not sustainable. And also when we're talking about financial things, like I always had a question like why we need to pay our existence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if we can really live in harmony with nature, like but now the system we have created and no one asking you to doubt it, right? And questioning it and we just live with it. And so of course, like you said, I'm the same. So that's why I change how I provide my healing. It's like sometimes the healing, you can do as much nervous system regulation you can do if the system doesn't change, and if you don't want to be the change you wish to see, and you are always going to be in that cycle, keep regulating yourself, keep like kind of like de-stressing, and it's become an endless loop. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like I will see a lot of people will starting to, hey, and also the fire energy will help in a lot of way, saying, hey, I need to stand up for something is not right. I need to be waking up saying, I actually taking the action to change, you know?
Big theme. Okay, Uranus and Gemini. And Gemini, that's the one I'm excited about because I have so many Gemini planets.
Yeah, you've got, how many planets you've got in Gemini?
Slightly terrified. I think like all my Gemini planets are in the 12th house. So I said to my partner, like I'll either have massive breakthroughs or I'll end up in a mental asylum. But yeah, Uranus and Gemini is 7 to 8 years, right? July 2025. It entered Gemini. It's been going back and forth. It's in Taurus right now, wrapping up. Again, this kind of wrapping up energy still at this first half of the year. And then in May, when does it go into? April. It goes into Gemini till May 2033. So I am excited about this. I think it'll be very liberating. Obviously, there's also, you know, Gemini rules the mind. It rules our communication. Uranus is like breakthroughs, sudden events. It's very fast. Uranus is lightning fast. So obviously tech, AI, we've had a taste of that. I think we don't even know where that's going yet, especially with Pluto and Aquarius as well, both air signs. And obviously Uranus rules Aquarius. So we've got that reciprocal, you know, energy.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to speed everything up. Like we can't even imagine on a tech, AI, communication. And I like your idea on this as well, because I'm a little bit, you were talking about the mind. Do you want to talk about that with the Uranus and Gemini?
Yeah. So I think that was, for me, like, you know, last 7 or 8 years working Taurus, was still in Taurus, I think until April, isn't it? Until April. And then getting to Gemini. Because I feel like when Uranus, for me, is the higher mind, like the higher consciousness. And it's because it's the outer planet, and also it's like higher, it's kind of like innovations, like something, our human mind, because Gemini for me is like the human mind, how we are functioning as a human, and then how we think, how we communicate. And that's a human way of thinking and understanding about different things. But Uranus is like, let's give you a shocking idea. And so all the innovative ideas and all the, like, for example, technology advancement will coming from Uranus. And also, I feel like there's also a lot of things, because Uranus is coming from the higher sort of consciousness for me. And then if that's coming to Gemini, so basically there's a lot like a download or information will coming through to human comprehension. For example, if you're talking about an idea about just, for example, the multi-dimensional things, for example, aliens, right? And people maybe doesn't believe it. And you might be having some shocking things coming through and saying, wow, that's actually true.
messages from the outer. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's just my
And you
my
also talked about
interpretation for that.
mind telepathy, which I think was interesting, and then the mind control, which possibly is more Pluto and Aquarius, but also, and I think this goes into the AI. Again, there's this darker side of it, like, can we differentiate between what's real and what isn't? I guess that's also Neptune and Aries, and the mind control of AI. So there's all kind of interlinked, which is, definitely a darker side to all of this, and one that we have to be aware of, I think, because it can be shocking. Uranus can be very shocking.
And also you're talking about telepathic communication as well. I think that's another thing I will see from the Uranus in Gemini, because I feel like, because we actually telepathic communicate with each other all the time, but it's just because we're so shut down about that ability, and we condition ourselves to not believing. For example, if like sometimes when we communicate, right, you will kind of like, you already know what people are thinking, right? And that's actually already telepathic communication, because we are so kind of, how can I say, like familiar with just verbal communication. There's much more senses in the spiritual realm, in our own physical body. The telepathic communication is possible. I think this is actually will enhance that in a lot of way. And also a lot of people might also kind of like adding on to the technology in a technology in a lot of way,
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, like, Gemini, yes, it's definitely, I'm standing up for Gemini here, but Gemini is definitely about the human mind, right? And I think that's what we see. But Gemini is the sign of the twins. So there's also the sign, the twin that's on this earth, and the twin that is actually up in another dimension, and the communication between those two. And being a Gemini myself, like, there is this yearning for the lost twin, and I think Uranus in some ways, like, there's this, like, we know there's something else, whether you call it your higher self or God or whatever, there's this, like, but as a Gemini, there's a bridge, and with Uranus there, I think there could be some very exciting, shocking, innovative information come through, whether that's from aliens or from our own minds or from tech or from AI or who knows.
Yeah. And also another thing I want to, I feel like for me, I will feel like this is easier because Uranus like change, right? Like Gemini like change too, like diversity. So I feel like that will be much easier to work with compared to Taurus, because Taurus energy just, Taurus energy is really stubborn, fixated, and like holding. So it's resist change, basically. So that's why when Uranus working with Taurus, like actually, like he's working really hard with Taurus, I have to say. But with Gemini, will be like much easier, because Gemini, I'm open to change, I'm open to diversity, I'm open to information. So it's like a much more easier to download, rather than like, because Taurus like, nah, I'm not gonna want to change, I don't want to do this. Totally. So I think that's kind of like will help things collectively more easier.
I think the mutable signs, so let's look at Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces, definitely are, I think this is going to be an easier transit for them, because we are, and we are a lot more flexible. The flip side to that, again, is not burning out, not frying our brains, and not spreading ourselves too thin. That's I think that's for those signs, for the mutable signs, that is the caution there. We're wrapping up the outer planets.
Wait a minute, I do want to talk about talking about your like transit, like what's coming up for you, the Gemini.
I don't know. As I said, I think I've talked about it. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I definitely.
So is that Uranus going to touch your Mercury, isn't it, or not?
It'll hit Mercury first. It'll take a little while to get there, so I've got a bit of time. So my Mercury's at 7 degrees, and then it'll hit my Sun, and then my Chiron, and then eventually later on my Mars. But I feel myself really breaking free already. There is this like liberating. Obviously, it's in the 12th house, and I've got a very strong Chiron in the 12th that is my mind, my communication, my identity of self. There's a real wounding around that, and I feel myself breaking free of that. And healing it in some ways, but not in like a Pluto healing sense, more in like a just like boom, break through it, like just I think I'm actually excited, but I'm also really aware of my physical body in this.
Yeah, yeah,
Just because, and then this is again where I feel like astrology is so invaluable, because you can see how you can support yourself. And
yeah,
we'll talk about that right at the end when we talk about how we're going to make the most of all of this. But,
yeah,
I think for
yeah,
me, having learnt from Uranus and Taurus, I've
yeah.
had to really work on my physical body and my nervous system support,
Yeah,
and not forgetting those lessons in some way, like
yeah.
taking those through into the next
Mm,
8 years. Yeah.
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 Okay, great. Because I do feel like, for my sense, I feel like the Uranus, because I can see you have like Mercury and Chiron conjunction, right? That wounding about communication, about thinking, and also like 12th house is so associated with your spirituality and your
Mm,
past life and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like there will be like a awakening moment for you to say, hey, now you open it up. And
mm,
the woundings kind of like give you opportunity to say, this can be healed, this can be overcome in a lot of way. I don't know, the next 7 to 8 years, I feel like you might be maybe hiding from behind the scene, not able to talk openly, even though you already have a lot of like information, knowledge, wisdom to share. But there's a wounding, so like, and also in 12 houses, like hidden isolation, like it doesn't want to be seen.
yeah.
I feel like it's like a breakthrough saying, hey, let's just stepping out of that, and this can be healed, and there's like more information coming through for you as well. That's
Mm.
just me. I don't know. I just,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
what I see.
even just doing this podcast, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
putting myself out there. And it is opposing my moon as well, and opposing my
yeah,
Uranus. So I'm coming into my Uranus opposition as
yeah,
well. So again, like in this sixth house. So, I do feel like it's going to be a very liberating, and
yeah,
I'm very much a free spirit, and I'm stepping
yeah,
into that more and more. So
yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
with that comes, I think, Uranus, this is the last thing I want to say about Uranus and Gemini, the anxiety that is coming through, I think, for people
yeah,
with
yeah.
Uranus and Gemini. Like I, actually my partner the other day, he went for a drive, and I was like, it was, I think, on the 1st of January, went for a drive, and it was just like, oh, I felt so anxious, and I don't know why. And I think there is this, obviously everything's changing, and people, we feel that. Again, it's like individually we might be exactly where we were 3 years ago. I don't know many people that's true, but but we feel it collectively. There's this change, and I think the Uranus and Gemini, that's definitely an anxiety kind of transit as well.
Yeah. And also, like you
There's
said,
like,
I
we
feel
don't
like
know
maybe,
what's coming.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't know what's
yeah.
coming. Yeah.
Yeah, because another thing I want to touch on Uranus, because I think a lot of people think Uranus will bring chaos, will bring changes, like shaking your nervous system, right?
Yeah.
Because most people like not familiar or like embrace the uncertainty that as a human, because we
Yeah.
just want to know, right?
Yeah.
And that will bring
Yeah.
a lot of anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen. And Uranus always bring sudden change and surprise,
Yeah.
and then you just literally get shaking up in that way. But I also feel like you said, Uranus in Gemini will be a little bit energy of, how can I say, the information overload.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many information going
Mm-hmm.
on, so you don't know what to choose.
Yeah.
And you might be kind of like, your nervous system got wired up. It's just like, okay, so many things going on, I'm not sure where I'm going, and too many things, like multitasking all the
Yeah.
time. And that can be, so that's why I feel like another thing for this energy is like really grounding. Like you said, we actually need to, because there's too mental energy going on in that way. You
Yeah.
need to really bring things back to your body,
Yeah.
and to really taking care of your nervous system. If
Yeah.
you, for example, you're consuming too much information in social media, or consuming
Yeah.
too much information like in the conversations or socializing, sometimes you really need to, hey, I do need some time to just not really always like expose yourself into the conversation or like information consumption. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's another thing I want to just touch on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So as we wrap up the outer planets, just
Yep.
want to say as well that all these outer planets are really making some nice supportive aspects to each other,
Yeah.
So there's like, Uranus is obviously trining Pluto in Aquarius. So as Uranus moves moves into Gemini, it's going to be trining Pluto in Aquarius. It's sextiling Neptune and Saturn in Aries. So I mean, that's good. It's good. Like it's you know, it's a really supportive aspect. So what that means is, I think, again, it adds to that forward momentum as well. But I mean, it's good for whoever takes charge of it, right? So it's good for the fascist leaders as well. Because they have the same energy. They've got this easy run of just like, boom, full steam ahead. But it's also good for the resistance, which is like, no, like, you know, so there is I thought that was quite interesting.
So shall we go to Jupiter?
So let's do the kind of social planets. We've got Jupiter moving into Leo, and that is in June from memory. I've just got the dates here.
You mean July? Jupiter in Leo?
July 1st.
Yeah, July 1st,
So it's been in Cancer. I'm a little bit sad to see Jupiter leave Cancer, to be honest, because I do feel like Jupiter in Cancer has kept things, you know, there has been a lens of compassion, and you know, we are all one, and Cancer is obviously the nurturing sign of the, you know, the mother, and seeing these atrocities that have happened in the world, like, I think it's really hit us emotionally. Like Jupiter in Cancer's really shone a spotlight on that. I think Jupiter moving into Leo, again, is going to bring the world, the leaders on the world stage into focus a lot more, and really highlight that. And I don't think we can talk about Jupiter and Leo without talking the nodes, which we will. And so the South Node is going to be in Leo. So that's an interesting juxtaposition, because Jupiter is like expanding Leo, and Leo is about leadership and ego in some ways, and, you know, also the heart. Like, it is a very heart,
the heart,
you know, it's about. But then this, obviously, the South Node is about the listening and moving away from that. So I don't know, that Jupiter in Leo is going to be interesting. Again, it's a fire sign, so more fire. But for me, I really feel like that's really going to be about the leaders and shining a spotlight on the leaders of the world.
Yeah, definitely feel it, because Jupiter is expanding, right? Like expansion. I feel like it's emphasizing the Leo energy. So I feel like there's like Leo for me is also creativity as well. So I feel like there's more like creative, like project or things will coming out, because people more channel their like expression, because Leo is really kind of like, okay, I am a performer. I'm gonna just like express myself like from my heart, right? Like I said, Leo can be two manifestations. It can be really egocentric and just like, okay, it's all about me, right? But also, if you're really leading by the heart, a good Leo will be, okay, I take the leadership from my heart and then bring my authentic expression to the community, right? So it's basically emphasize this, and depends on like where Leo is in your chart. Like, for example, we are both Cancer rising, right? So I'm not sure you, if I definitely feel like it's, for me, it's in the second house. Is your second house as well?
The end of the second house for me. So
the second house is also the money and the income, and also self-value as well. So the moving the sign is actually like, I think, well, actually my second house cusp is like Cancer, but it's actually so it's kind of like you're working with the second house energy, but changing the sign, the gears, right? So I feel like I'm not sure how you feel the last year about Jupiter in Cancer, even now retrograde in Cancer. I do feel like I am much more confident about myself. I can like really able to allow myself to put myself out there. So normally I will just like shy away from like what I know, or just like doing like always in the background and just organizing things. But this year really gave me that confidence to say, hey, I need to stepping up, taking the leadership. Like, I do like Jupiter in Cancer, because
so Jupiter so Jupiter's been in our first house, right? And that's why so we're like, kind of like, right,
so put it out there. But I do feel the energy, but also I also feel like I do kind of like, I still like the Jupiter in Leo as well, because I feel like that will bring more like really authentic expression, and then maybe potentially bring outcome, bring the income, bring the abundance as well, right? Also, like you said, the Leo and Jupiter, but it really depends on which like Leo in your sign, and then that's will affecting your life differently, right? So I think we're so I think that's the one thing I want to talking about, and then shall we talk about South Node and Leo? What do you feel about that? The
South
conjunction
Node in
South
Leo
Node
and North Node in Aquarius. So it's been, obviously the South Node's been in Virgo and the North Node is in Pisces. I think they switch on
11/11.
No, that's the
July.
Jupiter conjoined.
July 28th. I think that's the shipping date.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely moving from individualism, which, you know, is Leo, and to, again, a more collective energy. Obviously, we've got Pluto in Aquarius, so it's really highlighting that collective energy, you know, for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I mean, that expression has, in history, also had awful effects, right, for the greater good, because what do we eradicate for the greater good? So again, it can be like two sides of the coin. Who determines what the greater good is, you know? But, you know, there's this humanitarian shift from ego to the collective, you know, from the self to the collective. And working in kind of, I guess, on the fringes of the wellness world, I've noticed that a lot. It's even just, you know, you go on social media and people are starting to be like, okay, we've been talking about self-actualization and self-care and self-awareness, and it's all been self, right? And I can see the shift now in the narrative of, wow, actually community is important, and like it's not just about you. Like it's almost like we've been so self-centered. We've been so self-centered, and we've you know, like, oh, I need to put in my boundaries, and I need to, you know, I don't feel like turning up to this thing because it doesn't feel right for me in this moment. But actually, you know, sometimes you have to be like, you have to turn up for the community, even if you don't feel like it, you know. So I can see this switch, and also in relationship, I think, as well, you know, like, they're on their journey, I'm on my journey, whatever. But actually I'm starting to see, you know, and I love the psychology of relationship. That's something that I'm really interested in, you know, that kind of like, actually we are a team and we support each other. You know, it's not just like me and you. This whole move away from codependency to like hyper dependency, you know, and how can we kind of come back to, there's even research coming up that people that are codependent are more successful in some ways, you know. So it's so it's just interesting to see the flip in that, and you'll see it in different areas, I think.
I totally agree, because I feel like that's kind of like the Pluto emphasized on the Aquarius, the collective, the group, right? So like sometimes, like when we're talking about, I think the other day I was watching something talking about the Western therapy focus on the individualism, and like talking about boundaries, but not talking about repair, not talking about like you, like sometimes you don't feel good about it, but like this is for the great, like for the community, right? It's not saying you need to sacrifice yourself, but also that's also need to be considered. If you want to be taking care of the village, you also need to show up for the village.
You need to show up. And I think people are like, oh, you know, we haven't got community anymore. And I'm like, but no one's showing up, you know, like.
You want a community, but you don't want to create. You don't want to show up. You don't want to connect.
And I'm
then where's the community?
I'm definitely guilty of that as well, you know, so
So I think that's something. And another thing I want to touch on Jupiter and Leo, like about the inner child healing, I think we mentioned before. That's a really interesting angle, I guess, because for me, Leo is like, you know, like fifth house, associated with fifth house, right? Fifth house is children, is your creative like expression. And so for me, Leo is really like that heart-centered expression, sometimes can be the inner child healing as well. And when the conjunct with the South Node, I feel like there's a lot of things need to letting go of. Like, especially, for example, when we as a wounded child and what we're going through, maybe the expression was being suppressed. Maybe your talent wasn't being recognized, because also for me, the Leo is also representing some talents, right? The talents you have. But there's something like the wounding or like the healing around that wasn't being recognized or healed from. And the South Node is actually helping to letting go of all this baggage, so you can really step into that authentic self to express yourself, and also to really having a safe sort of like inner child within you to help you to like forward express yourself in a more healthy way, rather than still holding on to the past and like not able to, like you said, for example, like if you inner child healing is not just about the child expression, it's about like really embodying like a healthy adult within you. So you having that healthy adult taking care of your life, and then so you're able to, for example, show up for the community.
Yeah.
It's not all just about like your expression. It's also this expression can help, make an impact on help for the community, for the greatest good. You know what I mean? So I think that's another thing I feel was kind of like drawing me to making that like a statement.
Yeah. And then obviously when we talk about the nodes, there's also eclipse. So we've got 2 eclipse seasons this year. We've got February, March. So end of February, early March is our first eclipse season. And we won't go into too much in this episode, because I think maybe our next podcast on mid-February could be on that. The eclipse season. And then the second eclipse season is August, in August. And we have eclipses every year, obviously, but they always bring change as well, so they're going to be on that Leo Aquarius axis. And I think we go into that in another episode.
We don't need to go detail about that. I think that's like a big thing, like a massive topic as well. And how the cycle affecting us. And
cool. All right, so then the inner planets, Mars, again, Mars is a really important planet this year, I think, because it rules that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So the interesting thing about Mars this year, I think, is that you pointed this out, that it's actually direct the whole year. So again, it's like full steam ahead. Mars is action, it's our drive, it's our, it's our pushing forward. It's very masculine energy. And it is like, it is full steam ahead till the end of the year, where it completely slows down. It doesn't quite retrograde yet. We start 2027 with a retrograde, which is like with a Mars retrograde. So I think that's interesting. It is like kind of this, like it hits a wall at the end of the year. And again, that's something we'll probably talk more about later on, but I just find that quite interesting too, how this year is like full of momentum and it's like full go, but there is this kind of like stop sign at the end of the year, and whatever that is, I don't know, we will see. And
also one thing I want to add on, not about Mars, but when you're talking about like the Mars, like straight away in the end of the year, like retrograde, so basically the whole year is like moving, go, right? And also when talking about the whole retrograde period, I think I make note before that's like the retrograde-free time is from March 21st to May 6th. There's nothing retrograde. So that's what I'm saying. Like
when 21st to May
6th.
That's the window, so guys.
That's the window. So I feel like that's kind of like if you're really planning something, like really, for example, you prepare for the first 3 months, like what you want to build in momentum, right? And that's the retrograde free time, like really launching things and moving things forward. But of course, when we starting to, for example, launching things and putting things out there, we also need to have time to readjust, like for example, like what works, what doesn't work. So I feel like always the planet movement, the retrograde, is actually not bad things. Basically, even Mercury retrograde is asking us to actually, hey, now you're going forward and backwards a little bit and reflect and review, and then you're putting that out there again. You're not just like keep go, because the Mars energy this year can also really burning out because you have no break. Basically, if Mars is your drive, is the vitality, and the whole year is like forward movement. So that's what I'm saying. Like you really need to learn how to grounding yourself and how to kind of like watch the speed and like where you're going and like how fast you can go. Otherwise, you can really just, there's no break in between. So that's just one thing I want to mention.
So I like that. So it's in March. And again, it's kind of what we said at the start, and we're starting to wrap up now, but what we said at the start of this episode is like, use these next 2-3 months to kind of wrap up things, prepare, because it's just going to go boom. And then I think using the retrogrades, which we'll talk about now, Venus and Mercury both go retrograde this year. I mean, Mercury goes retrograde every year. Interesting that Mercury retrograde this year is all in water signs. So I think last year was air. Was it? Fire. Can't remember. And so they're all in water signs. So the first one's February 27th to March 20th in Pisces, which is again so interesting that Mercury is right before that Aries ingress, you know, the sun moving into Aries in the astrological new year. Mercury is doing a little retrograde through Pisces. So again, it's like this final wrapping up. And then June, July, it's in Cancer. So again, June, July, again, we've just come out of that retrograde-free area. And it is probably quite a nice time to actually just go back inwards into that Cancer energy and go, what do I need to nurture myself, right? And then that last retrograde for Mercury is October 25th to November 13th in Scorpio. And this is the big one because that is the same time that Venus is retrograding in Scorpio. And we'll end on this, I think, talking about the Venus retrograde, because everything we've talked about so far has been like forward, go, go, go. But Venus retrograde, October 4th, am I reading that right? Yeah,
I
October
think so.
4th, Scorpio. So it stations retrograde at 8 degrees Scorpio, and then goes back into Libra on October 26th and then leaves the retrograde on November 14th. But I mean, by the time it leaves the shadow, it will be the end of the year. So again, we're kind of slowing down at the end of the year. And that Venus retrograde in Scorpio, along with the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, I think is going to be a bit of a reality check as well. And tender, I would say. Oh, it's going to be going over your Venus in Scorpio. You'll have your Venus return over in that retrograde period, which is interesting.
Yes. Yeah, that's another interesting thing. I think that will be another episode about Venus return, about like how that feels in real life.
But, you know, I think, what do you think that kind of, that the end of the year, that Venus retrograde, I think for me, Venus in Scorpio, you know, it always dregs up old stuff, you know. I think Venus is what we hold dear, what we value, and Scorpio wants to go deep. And then Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio too, so you've got like, you know, lies coming up or hidden information. Venus is about women or femmes, or, you know, and you know, I think when we were prepping for this, the Epstein files were really in the media, so there's kind of that energy around it, you know, like more information coming up on there, but definitely within ourselves, like really digging into our own values and what is important to us.
I think I mentioned to you as well, like I think last time when the Venus retrograde in the same signs, Scorpio to Libra, and it was, I think it was also November as well, like it was 2008, 7 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's usually 8 to 7 years.
7 years ago, 2018. That's exactly when I like lost a really great friend of mine. And it's like really painful in a lot of way, but I feel like definitely how I relate to people. Of course, like I'm not like the good person in the story, but it's like we all have that wounding, and then the interaction become like, you know, like things have to end in a lot of way. And I feel like it's really bring a lot of like deeper like wounding from the, you know, the Scorpio, the underworld, and then through relationship and bringing to the surface. And then I was like, whoa, and that loss really make me reflect how much I have to like really heal myself in a lot of way, you know what I mean? So I feel like it will be interesting to see the cycle returns, what's going to happen in the same time, but because I am different, I evolved, I growed. Of course, I'm not going to say it's going to be same thing happening, but I feel like it's similar scene, maybe like still relationship, still, for example, something along that line, or even money, because Venus is governed like a relationship and money, right? And also your self-value, like how you value yourself. I feel like that will be totally different. I always feel like I'm not sure how you feel about the cycle. For example, we're talking about Venus return and Saturn return, that kind of stuff. I feel like the cycles are actually like kind of like a test in each return. It's saying, hey, you have this 7 years to grow and to evolve, and how are you doing right now? Are you actually there? Are you actually doing the work? You know what I mean? Because I feel like it's kind of like,
aren't you?
Yes, I am a Capricorn. I feel like it's that way. It's like, okay, let's check where you are at now. Like how's your growth, and how you handle things will be totally different than 7 years ago. You know what I mean? So I think that's another thing. Another thing I want to mention about the retrograde as well. Like I think I read the note about the the retrograde part, like you said, in the end of the year, the retrograde party begins from Saturn, Chiron during Neptune, Pluto start from August. So start from August until but pretty much end of the year, because August I think is like the five planets all retrograde. So that's like October is massive retrograde thing going on. So that's where I feel like you really need to stop a little bit and kind of like go inwards. Okay, what's going on in what happening in, because like from March going on to August is kind of like a really fast movement. I mean, you might be slow a little bit after May, but still after August to October, it's like, okay, let's just have a pause. Let's just have going inward and see what you're putting out there. Yeah. So I think that's kind of like in general, like the retrograde, I think is really helping us to understand the rhythm of our cycle, even though all the fiery Aries energy is like going forward, but we still need to holding our horse a little bit, because the horse cannot just keep running.
no, it's the drink. Jeez. I think with the Venus retrograde as well, like I think there is a real uprising of the feminine too, and the wounding of the feminine. Not just in women. Obviously, I'm talking about the feminine in the world. And there's the dark side of that too. So I think we've reached the end. So I think overall, we're talking about the first 2-3 months of this year, like wrap things up. Get ready. And then it's like, boom, full steam ahead till mid-year. And then it's like slowing down. And then at the end of the year, it's like, slowed down. That's the overall energy. So I guess, how are you going to tackle 2026 now that you know that?
I'm a Sagittarius, like, like the Pluto conjunct my natal Saturn and square my Venus. This is not like an easy transit at all. But I don't want to, for myself, like get into a fearful mode, because I've been through a lot healing journey myself. Like, so I just feel like for me, it's like a really honoring like each planet. For example, if I knew Pluto is like, how to say, detoxer, right? Basically, like I'm allowing. And yes, it will be intense. I will be prepared for the intensity, and it might be painful. It might be some loss involved. I'm not saying I'm gonna just bypassing all the feeling side of things. It's just like I'm more prepared for what is coming, and knowing, for example, like each planet has its purpose, right? So Pluto is help you to detoxifying, purifying, but there's a growing pain alongside with it, right? So you just more prepare for what's going to happen, and also not kind of fixated what like trying to predict, because I think that's one thing about astrology. If you're trying to predict, that's when you get anxious, get fear coming in, and that's when you're actually not able to fully allowing yourself to experiencing the transit and really learn the lesson from it, because you're trying to using your mind to control the outcome or what is going to come, right? So for me, I was like, it's gonna be like a little bit harder, or like negative, or not negative. I think all for good. It just, you need to be prepared. So hey, this is what I'm gonna be working through. If I knew I'm going through this kind of process, I will stay with that process, instead of like maybe before, when I doesn't have any all the tools I've got, I might just run away. I might just numbing it out, right? But now I have the tool, I understand, I have awareness, then I will allow myself to really sit with this transit and seeing, really experiencing what is the lesson from it, right? Because only when you're in it, you will know. But you're not trying to predicting, or like, oh, this is something, what's going to happen. I might have a little bit sense of what is coming up, but and also similar with the Venus return thing as well. It's like, 7 years ago, I lost someone I really value, but 7 years later, you never know. But also, we're allowing myself to say, hey, this is going to be some internal process going on, so I'm ready for it. And like just creating more space and more capacity and more compassion for that inward process, because normally we got taught to shut down, to not feeling it, to distracting ourselves for other things. But now, like when we really get into this healing space, I was saying, hey, this is a great time for us to actually learn as a soul and grow as a soul, So for me, just like, it might be, and also there's some good transit as well. For example, Jupiter getting to my second house, and abundance, and and Uranus in Gemini. I quite like that, even though you don't like that as well. But for me, I quite like that energy. It just really things like innovative things and things coming out. So for me, just like really be prepared, having more awareness, and just really asking. I think this can be another episode as well, like how to navigating negative transit.
Yeah.
Just really asking a question, what I can learn from here, instead of like it being in the victim saying, hey, oh, this is happening to me. Like we speaking about in the very first introduction, the planet doesn't causing anything. It's reflecting ourselves, how you deal with it, how you're responding to it. And that's where like how you grow and evolve in a lot of way, right? So it's not just they causing things happening to us. We have choices always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
how
it's
about
interesting.
you?
Yeah, just reflecting on that, I think that victim mentality is definitely going to get pushed aside this year, like with that forward movement. We're going to be forced to, not be the victim. Interesting with the Venus retrograde in Scorpio, I think we do have to acknowledge that some people, there's some horrible stuff that goes on. And not to bypass that either, yes, it's about taking responsibility, but sometimes life is just really, really shit. And we actually don't have power and we don't have choice, So I think that's that Venus retrograde coming in. For me, I think I've already mentioned, I'm going to use what I've learned. So same as you, I think each transit that you do, so like with each Pluto transit, for example, you become stronger and you become, the next one becomes less intense. I do think that, like, if a person has had lots of Pluto transits or Pluto is really strong in their chart, they're going to be a lot more equipped to deal with Pluto transits. It's like we do learn as we go, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have any Pluto transits this year. I've done that the last 3 years.
Congratulations.
I've got a lot of fire and air. So learning from my the last 10 years of having to slow down when the momentum picks up. So, I think having that mindful flexibility is my mantra. Mindfully flexible, not spreading myself too thin, because I know the energy is going to really heat my constitution up. It's going to make me want to go faster. But actually, like, having the lessons from the past of being like, no, take the time out, take the time to slow down. That's going to have to be very conscious and mindfully done, because the energy is going to be there to just push. So that's how I'm using this forecast to help myself, knowing my personal makeup. So consciously working on grounding, things that, things
Uranus
like
in Gemini,
easy things like cooking a good meal and going for walks in nature and all the things that I've learned to helps me ground. Nervous system support, which is also my line of work. I mean, you teach what you need to learn yourself, right? So
yes.
So using the gifts, I think, from the earth and water transits that we've had, working with my emotions more. That's been huge over the last 3-4 years, as we've been Saturn in Pisces, and we've had Jupiter, and we've had a lot of water, we've had a lot of earth. So working with my emotions rather than just pushing past them,
And also I do feel like there's another thing about like the emotion side things. I feel like in this year, because we actually had a lot of like years for the healing, really going to the emotional side of things. And the first 3 months, like I said, we're still in like the year of the snake. We're still having that window of shedding the skin, still have that window really going through what is the emotional baggage we've carried. And so I think that's also maybe we can, like, if the audience listening to this, like really utilizing the first 3 months to go through the old emotional baggage or the victim mentality you're still having. Because after the March is basically you don't have any time to process your emotion, but now you do have time, so do it.
You don't. That's so true.
So that's what I'm saying. Like the first 3 months, even though I'm still slowly decluttering and like really like all the old images and like old stuff, like really bring memories, and it is done. And I really need to really consciously choosing the new chapter of life rather than still holding on to the old stuff, no matter good or bad, because it is already past, and you shouldn't allow that still affecting your new chapter of life and new version of you.
Yeah.
You know, so
And I mean, a
yeah,
classic example for me was yesterday, you know, and the Cancer full moon was really tender for me. And I
yeah,
was literally like, I'm going through my old photos of
yeah,
my kids when they were little, and I'm organizing them away, and I'm backing them up onto hard drives. And as I go through them, there's a lot of mourning. There's a lot of
yeah,
emotion that comes up for me. I've been through a
mm,
divorce and a separation in the last 3 years. So there's still that kind of mourning of the family that I had.
yeah,
But I know that's all necessary for me to do. Like last night, I just cried and cried and cried. That is
mm,
necessary for me to work through, because I know I'm stepping into something new, you know? So
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So
yeah,
like really mundane stuff, like sorting out my photos, you know, Cancer,
yes,
you know,
yeah,
all the family photos, like, because I'm not going to
yeah,
have time. I'm not going to have time this year.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and,
So
and
that's
then
really
as that
taking,
comes up,
yeah.
like processing the emotions that come up with that, you know?
Yeah, because I feel like also like a lot of people like bypassing the grieving process as well, because you do have a lot of like potentials. For example, you might be with someone like relationships and like good memories. There's you grieving about the what if, what could have, right? The
Yeah.
potential you're going through, and allowing yourself to grieving that.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like also sometimes grieving the old version of you
Yes.
is
Yeah.
dying. It's
100%.
basically grieving about yourself,
Yeah.
and then you creating the space to allowing the new one coming in.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's really taking that time to, okay, now you still have time to rest, you still have time to clearing, and just do that. And then after that, and then you will know the new version of you, both
Yeah.
confident yourself will stepping into, like I said before, you either step up or step aside, because it's not going to wait for you. It's not going to waiting for you until you're ready. It's just let's go. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, but you need to be ready before that energy really shifting. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah, so I think that's pretty much us,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right, great. I'm gonna stop recording for now. um,
Thanks so much for joining us on Let's Blame the Planets. We'll be back next month with another deep dive into the sky and how it's showing up in our lives. If you want to keep up with what else we're offering, from astrology insights to workshops and more, check out our social handles in the description below. And don't forget to follow so you don't miss the next episode.